Okay, fine. Let's bring it in. Let's set this record straight here, because it seems to be something that a lot of people are on, and I'm talking about the wagon. If you're wondering what I mean by the wagon, I'm talking about the AFC North, and a lot of you seem to be right on ship with the Cleveland Browns. But if you really look into this team, they have a good team, but you can't have them winning the division when they haven't played one game together as a team yet, and I don't think they're going to win the division. So that brings me to the AFC North. I probably had about 5 days where I have not made a video. I've been kind of busy, but tonight is the NFL Eve of NFL Kickoff Eve, is what you want to call it. I am going to put up the AFC North, try to get the South and the West up by Friday. So we're going to go with that. But the AFC North is a little bit interesting because there's some teams in this division that are better than you think, and some teams that are not as good as you think. But the Baltimore Ravens is the team that I kick it off with. And before I get scrutinized in the comments, I don't really like Lamar Jackson, and I've kind of said this. He's not, to me, when I look at a coach's quarterback. Some of you are going to understand that, some of you probably won't. But to me, when I look at Lamar Jackson, I look at someone that has talent to be a quarterback, but he looks to me as he's a backup quarterback. I don't really see him as a starting quarterback. He doesn't really throw deep down the field. Their passing during the season last year under the Ravens when Lamar Jackson was quarterback dramatically decreased. He's very good on his feet. He's very mobile, and I think he might be a better version of RG3. To me, I just think he's overhyped. I think that he's bound to have an injury and he's going to get hurt. And I think that when you have a quarterback like that, they're good until they get hurt. Like RG3 had the injuries, and now he's just hopping around on teams. He's actually, if I'm correct, RG3 is Lamar Jackson's backup. But I don't think Lamar Jackson is really as good as people say he is to be, and I don't think he's going to be the franchise answer the Ravens are looking for. As far as running backs go, they were actually beasting last year. They had 2,400 plus total yards during the season. Gus Edwards was a second half running back for the Ravens, if I'm correct, also, and he was lighting the league up. He ran for, I believe, 718, so that's half a season. That's pretty solid. They also added Mark Ingram too in the offseason, and he'll also be working under the running backs as well. And the receivers, there's some question marks here. They drafted Marquise Brown. Willie Snead had 651 yards last year, and John Brown had 715. They cut Michael Crabtree because he could not hang on to the football last year. So their receiving core, that's that. Their offensive line, they have one of the best guards in the league, actually, in Marshall Yanda. But they completely fell over and folded over and died during the playoff game. They allowed 7 sacks in the playoff game last year against the Chargers when Lamar Jackson had an awful performance as well. And their defensive line, too, also was pretty great at run stopping last year. Michael Pierce became one of the leaders on that line. Was a factor on that Ravens team, but he left to come to my Titans team. So we're going to see how he factors with that. Their defensive line is pretty solid for the Baltimore Ravens, and that's good. But they're still kind of going to be looking for a pass rusher this offseason, which leads me to the linebacker position, which was absolutely demolished over the season. If you want to talk about demolished at the highest degree, that was the Baltimore Ravens linebacker core. They had quality linebackers. They had Zadarius Smith, Terrell Suggs, and Zadarius Smith was great, but he went to the Packers. He had 8.5 sacks last year. Terrell Suggs, he's getting a little bit older, but he headed to the Cardinals, and that might be where his career dies off. He also had 7.5 sacks last year, and C.J. Mosley was a beast from the middle slot, but he did head to the Jets. So they completely lost all of their linebacking core, and they're going to try to work with the guys that they have now, but I think that is going to be a huge question mark for the Ravens moving forward in terms of their pass rush. Their secondary was solid to an extent. Marlon Humphrey had a breakout year last year in the secondary. Jimmy Smith was hurt as well, and he'll be looking for a bounce-back season. As far as it goes to me, the Ravens are really a question mark because this team was a good defensive team last year, and Joe Flacco was as good as he was until he went down and Lamar Jackson had to take over. But I think the Ravens got some question marks. I think that pass rush is a huge question mark for them, and I think that Lamar Jackson, I don't really see the Ravens winning this division. I don't see them making the playoffs either, but I'm not going to be the one to shit on Lamar Jackson either because there is potential with him. I don't know if I'd want him to be my quarterback. Now, when I talk about their uniforms being orange and black to represent Halloween, well, it's always scary if you're a Bengals fan. This team is ravaged by injuries last year, and they've been sinking to the bottom of the AFC North for God knows how long. They're still hopeful that Andy Dalton's going to make something here out of the Cincinnati Bengals, but coming towards the end of his contract, they did draft Brian Finley in the event that Andy Dalton gets hurt. He was a fourth-round draft. Like I said, Dalton's ending the year of his contract, and Jeff Driscoll is not as good, but he could also be an injury sub as well. So the quarterback position is a little bit of a question mark for Cincinnati. I do like Andy Dalton. I think he's good, but I also think that the pieces around him are good, but they could be better. Everyone's going to stay on the field. This team's always hurt. The running backs was a real deal last year. Joe Mixon was a 1,000-yard-plus star for the Cincinnati Bengals. Coach Taylor does want to keep, I'm sure, Joe Mixon fresh, so he's going to balance with another solid running back in Giovanni Bernard, who could maybe make over for that starting position on another team as a running back in terms of what I think. So their running backs are very good. They have I think that's going to be very balanced all year long as they stay healthy. Quarterback's a little bit of a question mark, but they have quality receivers. They have one of the better receiving corps in the league. A.J. Green has been proven to be one of the best receivers in the league, but he can't really stay on the field. He missed 7 games last year due to injury. Tyler Eifert was almost non-existent. He was also hurt, and Boyd as well had 1,000+ receiving. So the Bengals have a quality offense. They have the keys to be a team that gets 35+ in various games. I just think that the Bengals, they're a huge question mark. Offensive line also, you got Carl Lawson coming back from injury. They re-signed Carlos Dunlap, who's been a veteran for the Bengals for quite a few years, and Geno Atkins speaks for himself. He's a monstrous defensive tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's one of the leaders of the defense for the Cincinnati Bengals. Talent in the world, but Burfict was a different kind of issue. He had a lot more problems working with this Cincinnati Bengals team, so they got rid of him. They do have Nick Vigil, and Preston Brown is going to be getting some shots in the linebacking core for the Cincinnati Bengals, but their linebackers look a little bit weak. Their secondary, they have Jackson and they have Bates as well. They were showing promise last year, and Sean Williams had 5 interceptions on defense for the Cincinnati Bengals last year. The problem with this team to me is injuries. I mean, if you really look at the roster they have, there's no reason why this team can't be a playoff team. If they just work on their defense a little bit, there's no reason why the Bengals can't shoot up a wild card spot. But they're always hurt. There's so many players on this team, and I don't know exactly. He's almost been non-existent. I know they had that wild card game with the Steelers a couple years ago, but the Bengals don't seem to be doing much. They moved on from Marvin Lewis, who was a regular season coach and not much else. He had 7 losses in the playoffs, so that's something that they got to work on. The Bengals stay healthy, they can be a good team. They're nowhere close to winning this division, but they can be a good team, and they could really be a sleeper team to some people. But I think the Bengals are going to be last ranked in this division coming to a forward. Oh, here we go. The talking point of the NFL throughout majority of the offseason, the Cleveland Browns. Let's pump the brakes, folks, because this team has potential to win the division, but they're not going to, because this team has so many egos on this team, and I think if they have a bad September and you really get them in that 0-3, 0-4 tangent, everyone's going to start getting mad. Odell's mad, not because it's not about him, but Odell's upset because he's not winning. Where Brown, it's kind of like the cameras need to be on him, and if they're not pointed at him, why aren't they? There are so many egos on this team. Mayfield, you hadn't seen it much last year, but we had his problems in college with his temper. Odell Beckham, he kind of speaks for himself. The guy's had plenty of problems on the Giants. Kareem Hunt, that was outside of the NFL. But you have all these Pro Bowlers, and you have all these players that are so good, and sometimes it's you don't get to see what you pay for when you buy a ticket. I think the Browns have potential to win this division, but they won't. I think there's so many egos, and I think if they start off 0-3, 0-4, they're going to self-destruct, and it's just going to be a huge mess for the Browns. But the Browns. Baker Mayfield is the real deal to me. The Browns drafted him last year. He didn't get his start right away after Tyrod Taylor got hurt. I want to say in that Week 3 or Week 4 game against the Jets, you had him. coming in, and he led the Browns to do some damage. He passed for a lot of yards in his game, and I think that he can be very good on the Browns for a while. Baker Mayfield is a quarterback I would like to have on my team. Kareem Hunt is a great running back, but obviously the domestic violence issue cost him and hurt the Chiefs a little bit. So he's going to be serving an 8-game suspension, and that really hurts the run game for Cleveland, but not as much as you think, because Nick Chubb was a 1,000-yard beast last year, and he's, like I said, he's one of those running backs that can lock up the starting position on any given team. I think he'll hold it down for the run game in Cleveland, but Kareem Hunt is definitely the guy they're going with, but they won't be seeing him till at least Halloween time, right around when November rolls up. So that's a question mark, but you got Nick Chubb, but he's going to be taking a lot of the load. I don't know who the third string running back is, but he's going to be bumped obviously up the depth chart now because Kareem Hunt's not playing the first 8 games. They might have the best receiving core in football. They have an underrated player on that receiving core is David Njoku, who's a tight end. He had 56 receptions last year. Jarvis Landry is a beast. He kind of speaks for himself, a very overshadowed receiver in the NFL. He had 81 receptions last year. And the controversial but always great and spectacular Odell Beckham Jr. is joining the Cleveland Browns this year. As long as he has no trouble and he stays on the field and has no trouble, Odell Beckham should be fantastic for this Cleveland Browns team. I think he had 96 receptions in his last full season. Their offensive line was okay as well, so this Cleveland Browns offense has the potential to drop 4 or 5 40-plus games during this season. About this team too, their defense is also very good. So you put a good offense and a good defense together, that's what we call a complete football team. Myles Garrett was a beast. He speaks for himself. He had 13.5 sacks last year, and on the other side of him is going to be Vernon, and he had in the last 7 games I believe he had 7.5 sacks. I don't know if that's correct, but their defensive line is going to be very strong for the Browns, and they're going to be getting to the quarterback quick. Their linebackers is a little bit of a question, but they're kind of they're going to try to work through that. They have Taki they drafted. I don't know if I said that right, so if I said that wrong, you can get mad at me all you like. Christian Kirk is coming back from injury. He was good prior to it, and you have Wilson and Joe Schubert fighting for the middle linebacker position. So again, 3 out of 4 of these teams so far, the linebacker position is a bit of a question mark in this division in terms of the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Browns. But you do have a good secondary. You have Denzel Ward. He's a Pro Bowler. He speaks for himself. Greeded up to get Greedy Williams. He should look to be another good defensive player, but they also traded Jabril Peppers, who was good for the Browns in that Odell Beckham trade. So this Browns team on paper looks fantastic. There's really not too many weaknesses. Like I said, it's all in the egos in the head. Their linebackers are a little bit weak. Their secondary is good, but could be better. Their defensive line is great, and their offense is phenomenal. So we're going to see what happens when it all gets put together, because not everything is as good as it's advertised to be, and I think we all know that. I have winning the division this year, shocking to some, but not so shocking, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know this team has been a load of controversy the last 2 seasons, especially with Brown and Le'Veon, but both of those players, as good as they are not a part of this Pittsburgh team anymore, and it's not something that they have to worry about. The team moved on from distractions. Mike Tomlin, he's working with a lot of older guys on this team. Ben Roethlisberger, in theory, had a great year last year. He had 5,000 yards plus, but he needs to work on not giving up as many interceptions and not, being cherry picking with the football. He had 16 interceptions last year. They're going to try to cut that at least in half, or try to get it under double digits. But Big Ben did get that extension, and he's going to be the quarterback they're going with going forward. I do think that this might be his last contract that he did sign. Their running back position, onto one, onto the next. James Conner has been very good for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's one of the top backs. Yes, I went there for the NFL, and I think that James Conner is going to bring a lot to this Steelers team, and he's going to be starting now with other distractions in the background. They do have Jalen Samuels to be a backup for James Conner, because you can't have him run every damn play. The receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster is still with the Steelers, and he's a very good receiver, and he's going to be taking that number 1 role as the lead receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they're kind of looking for that number 2 breakout receiver. They did draft Deontay Johnson, and they did sign Moncrief as well. Vance McDonald was very good as a tight end last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers, So, good tight end bases in the NFL because you can't always throw to your receivers. They have a good tight end. They have Juju Smith, but they're going to try to see if they can, maybe develop another breakout wide receiver. And I think that will just complete that Pittsburgh offense just to the way that they need it. They need that second breakout wide receiver on their offense. Offensive line, they also have Cameron Hayward. He speaks for himself. He's a Pro Bowler. He's got 8 sacks last year. Javon Hargrave as well has 6.5 sacks. But they're going to look to see more from Stephon Tuitt. He wasn't really as productive as he should have been last year. Their defensive line is very good for Pittsburgh so far, and this is the only team in the division that has a very strong linebacker core. They do have T.J. Watt. He had 13 sacks last year. He's quietly one of the best. He had 6 fumbles forced as well. You also have Bud Dupree there, and they did draft one of maybe the best, if not the best, defensive players in the draft when they did draft Devin Bush. So the Steelers' defense is looking to really shape itself up. They didn't have a good pass defense last year in terms of their secondary. Steven Nelson was signed to go opposite of Joe Hayden, and they did draft his team. So I think that this secondary is a little bit of a question mark for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But all in all, this is a very well-rounded team, and I don't think that they get a lot of credit. I think because they lost 2 elite players in the NFL, they don't get the credit that they deserve. They have a good quarterback, they got a good running back, they have a good receiving core, their defensive line is pretty solid, their linebacking core is going to be great, their secondary is a bit of a question mark, so deep passes might torch the Steelers a little bit, but I think all in all the Steelers are probably the best well-rounded team, and not only that, but this team has the experience. Pittsburgh, when I look at the Steelers, they've been here, they've done it, they have Mike Tomlin. He's coming back, he's been with this team for a while. Ben Roethlisberger's been with this team for a while, and they have some players on here that are really good playmakers. And I think a lot of people sleep on the Steelers, and I may even be one of those people, those persons as well. But I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the AFC North. Better safe than sorry. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns broke out and they did it themselves, but I think the Pittsburgh Steelers is the team that you're going to be rocking with this year to win the AFC North. The Bengals can't stay on the field. Half their team is always hurt. And the Ravens, I do not think are as good of a team as people advertise them to be. I don't think Lamar Jackson is the answer. The linebacking core is atrocious. And I think the Ravens are not really going to be in for a strong season. But, maybe they'll prove me wrong. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win the AFC North this year. And what they do with it is up to them. I don't know if I could see them making a deep playoff run, really. But I'm going with them to win the AFC North. I have 2 more divisions left to do. The landscape of the AFC South completely changed overnight and last week in the time span of about 72 hours. And the AFC West is probably the hardest division to win in football. And then the season will be here and we'll be rocking and rolling. So I appreciate you guys all for watching. If you're still with me at this point, we are just eclipsed the 20-minute mark. But yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers are taking the AFC North because I said so.